Welcome to today's story. We enter a modern world testing how far souls have to travel to find one another. When we use humor to cope and those defenses finally break, how can we exist in the aftermath?
The Summoning. Mic check, one heartbreak, two heartbreaks, Arya said, voice bouncing off the studio glass. Levels good? Nico lifted a thumbs up from behind the console. Solid. Jared says to sound open-hearted tonight. She had laughed. Perfect. I practiced sincerity in the mirror twice, then ordered tacos. He grinned. Spirit of Valentines. Please, statistically, the use of the word girlfriend as profanity is more common in my group chats than as an actual noun. She loosened the cord around the mic like she was on knotting nerves. Nico chuckled. You realize people tune in for that attitude, right? The folklore is just decoration. I like to think it's mutual entertainment, she said. They bring the belief, I bring the curiosity, and together we keep the ghosts of pop culture employed. Very civic-minded. Arya winked through the glass. Somebody's got to keep the supernatural unionized. Countdown hit live in 0 hours, 1 minute, 30 seconds. She straightened her notes, smooth stray hair, one good breath centering her grin. All right, she murmured, gears clicking into host mode. Let's talk soulmates before the skeptic's shift ends. The mic light warmed red. Arya's mic light glowed red, the faintest warning that thousands of people could now hear her procrastinating about soulmates. Welcome back to Wolf Down, your weekly reminder that the supernatural is mostly natural and romance is mostly fiction. She tapped a pen against her notebook, falling into her comfort rhythm. Tonight, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to manifest our dream dates, because apparently that's a thing now. Jared from marketing had insisted she lean into the manifestation trend. Arya had resisted until she found the prop to match the clickbait, a folded scraps of parchment tucked under a wet bus stop bench. It looked self-published by medieval Instagram, curling ink, elaborate loops, a few suspicious smudges. After a few quips and comments, Arya began by lighting her candle. She flipped the crinkled paper toward the camera streaming her live feed. Supposedly an ancient soulmate chant. You light a candle, read it aloud, and your true mate finds you before midnight. You know, standard horror movie setup. The live chat scrolled gleefully. What could go wrong? Summon a hottie for me for Valentine's Day. Arya smirked. Do it? Fine. But if my building ends up haunted, I'm haunting you all back. She cleared her throat and read, playful dramatics wrapping around the words. By heart and howl, by moon and thread, let the bound be unbound, and the lost be led. For a half-second longer than needed, she kept her eyes closed, waiting for the usual nothing. Then the mic hummed, a low electric buzz that prickled up her arms. The candle flame stuttered sideways. Every monitor blinked out, and Wolf Down's animated logo warped into a black and gold crest she'd never seen. Nico's voice cracked through the dark. Arya? You paying the power bill? She barely got out. It's fine, just a... When a pulse of light snapped the room open, then came the wind. It was not studio air, not conditioned or tame. It tore out of nowhere and bent around her as if measuring. The computer screens flickered, one frame of shadow, then the outline of something tall, wolvish, made of color that existed only in lightning. A human shape unfolded from the static, wet sparks dripping from its edges. Arya saw gold markings, a mask of expression too deliberate to be fear. For 1 second, she thought she saw eyes that knew her. Then the monitors exploded. Through the burst and smoke, the figure stepped forward. The sparks cooled into skin and fabric. A man, or something similar, stood on her recording foam like it was sacred ground. He looked around, breathing deeply, and said in a voice that vibrated the glass, Summoner. Arya went absolutely still. Podcaster, she corrected faintly. And he was there. Huge. Wild. Absolutely not from marketing. A man stood inside her sound booth like the air itself had decided to sculpt a 6-foot-plus problem. Shoulders broad enough to block the door, hair dark, half wet like he'd walked straight out of a storm. Eyes, gold, faintly glowing under the emergency strobes. Nico whispered, That's method acting, right? The stranger's voice rolled out rough and formal, filling every corner of the booth. By blood and vow, I answer the call of the heart that spoke my name. Arya blinked, mouth dry. Okay, congratulations, you found the wrong podcast. He frowned at her mic. Is that a weapon? No, it's a microphone. Where did you even... Wait, how are you here? No answer. Only the soft, strange hum under his breath. He took a half step forward, gaze fixed on her like gravity had developed an opinion. You are the summoner. Her laugh came out too loud, nerves tripping over disbelief. I'm the what now? No, nope, I'm the host. People summon food delivery, not whatever you are. Nico, undecided on the type of threat, chose retreat as a survival tactic and bolted. The studio door slammed behind him. Arya and the stranger stared at each other across the glowing console. The last monitor still showed the live chat. Hundreds of comments racing by in digital hysteria. Are we watching a movie? Where did he come from? Marry him. Great, she muttered. I've turned my live stream into paranormal Tinder. He tilted his head, trying to decode her language. You called me, little one. I heard your voice. I came. And, she swallowed, I'm suddenly regretting it. He ignored the bite in her tone, gaze softening with something maddeningly sincere. I am Thorne of the Weaver's bloodline. Alpha King by birth, yours by bond. She stared, brain trying to inventory everything visible. The flicker of candle, faint vibration of cables, gold light haloing his outline. You've got to be kidding, she whispered. I do not kid, he said, scandalized by the very idea. I vow. The mic light flickered, feedback screeching, and she hit the cut feed switch on instinct. The silence afterward landed like a dropped stone. Arya's heart thudded unevenly. She realized she was still gripping the script page as though it could make sense of the moment. Okay, she managed. Either I inhaled too much candle smoke or physics just quit. Thorne looked around, slow, deliberate, as if mapping the room through vibration rather than sight. This place hums, he said softly. Every wall sings the shape of your words. She stared. Right, that's not terrifying at all. The candle guttered. Light rolled over him in thin waves, gold and electricity mixing until the whole booth felt alive. Arya could hear herself breathe, loud, shallow, and couldn't decide whether to run or interview him. Her mouth worked before her mind did. You said you came because I called. You mean the chant? That old scrap? He nodded once. Your voice traveled further than you knew. Great. She blinked hard, half laughing now, the sound high and ragged. I'm hallucinating mystical tech support. He didn't laugh. He looked at her with the calm of something used to impossibilities. Words deserted her. The studio seemed smaller by the second, filled with electric stillness, her own reflections looping on black screens. Herself, Thorne, and the candle between them, thin flame bending toward him. Outside, distant traffic murmured, reality trying to continue on schedule. Arya forced a shaky breath. You're real, she whispered, half question, half disbelief. Thorne's gold eyes softened, and he nodded once as if sparing her the effort of proving it. Her pulse roared in her ears. Somewhere under that sound, she thought she heard laughter, her own from the earlier segment, echoing faintly through speakers she knew she'd switched off. She thought about unplugging everything, but the man's presence held the room hostage. I need to call my producer, she whispered. The smell of ozone deepened, shadows folded in the corner, lightning trembled behind the window pane. He stepped closer, the floor creaking under deliberate weight. He stood there, half radiant, half human, in the ghost glow of her equipment. What do I call you? He asked finally. What do you call yourself? Arya quickly retorted. Names hold pledge, he said. Arya. Then, to steady her nerves, it rhymes with panic. A faint smile crossed his mouth. Thorne. She wrote the name down automatically in the project notes, as if she could catalog him like a new instrument. His expression barely shifted, as if he didn't quite understand humor but appreciated its pulse. You honor what binds sound, he said softly. That is rare. She rolled her eyes, exhausted. I honor not getting electrocuted. He looked up. And yet you reached across worlds anyway. Arya faced the half-lit doorway. I didn't reach. I recorded. Intent, he said again, unshakable, is merely heart disguised as craft. She wanted to argue, but the words tangled. Outside, distant sirens passed. The world still turned like none of it mattered. Inside, Thorne stood patient amid smoke and plastic, strange and sure, equal parts threat and curiosity. Happy Valentines, indeed, Arya thought faintly, not sure whether to scream or record it. The mic light glowed red again. Chapter 2. No rules, just requests. Morning arrived with the subtlety of a garbage truck reversing directly into Arya's skull. She stumbled from her bedroom nook, squinting against the betrayal of sunlight, and found Thorne exactly where she'd left him, occupying her couch like it owed him tribute. He'd commandeered the throw blanket. It was a kitschy thing, covered in cat faces, and he looked impossibly regal wrapped in it, bare-chested and glowing faintly at the edges like a defective nightlight. You realize that's decorative, right? She croaked. It's not actually structural support. His voice came out rough, unused. Your fabric claimed me. I respected the gesture. It's polyester from Target, not a relationship. Are they not similar in purpose? Warmth, comfort, occasional suffocation, she said, pouring coffee with the precision of a trauma surgeon. Yeah, you're not wrong. Thorne sat up, stretching in a way that made her kitchen feel suddenly claustrophobic. I have observed, he said, that your world operates on constraints. Signs, signals, locks. He stood, moving to her window, and looked out at the parking lot with intense focus. Yet you offer no commands, only avoidance. Arya sipped her coffee, watching the way the morning light carved his profile into something worthy of a museum. He was staring at her trash cans, plastic, green, currently overflowing with takeout containers, with the gravity of a man contemplating destiny. It was obnoxious how handsome he looked doing it. Okay, she said, setting her mug down with a ceramic clink. Before you start marking territory on my IKEA furniture or blessing my Wi-Fi router, we need boundaries, ground rules, a Geneva Convention for whatever this is. Thorne turned from the trash cans. Gold eyes tracked her, patient. Rules. Yes, like, tone down the glow. You're surging like my apartment's about to achieve enlightenment, and my landlord already thinks I'm running a tanning bed out of the bathroom. A corner of his mouth curved. It responds to emotion. You are vivid. Oh, we're blaming me now? Observing a catalyst is not blame. Good. Because rule 2, no vows, no by moon and marrow, no blood oaths, no poetic binding nonsense. When you say things like, I am yours by bond, it sounds half binding and 3/4 marriage proposal. Keep it metaphor light. He nodded, thoughtful. Oaths maintain order. Sure, but in this realm, they also get you on mailing lists, so here's the deal. She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze. No rules, requests instead. I request that you don't explode the toaster. You request that I don't know, don't pepper spray you while you sleep. We negotiate like adults, not like I'm holding a seance and you're the angry ghost. Thorne went very still. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. Negotiations, he said, tasting the word. I agree. Requests, not decrees. Progress, she exhaled. Now, request number 1. Stop looking like a romance novel cover while staring at my trash cans. It's distracting, and I need to take out the recycling. He glanced back at the window, then at her, confusion flickering. You find refuse attractive? I find you looking at refuse attractive. It's a problem. I'm going to need you to be uglier immediately. Thorne smiled, small, real, and entirely unfair. I will attempt to diminish my appeal. Good. Start by putting on a shirt. My emergency drawer has options that scream laundromat disaster. He moved toward the drawer, obedient but amused. As you request, little one. And don't call me little one until we've at least had a second date that doesn't involve property damage. Chapter 3. Soulmate Bingo. The toaster exploded. Not dramatically, just a pop, a spark, and a piece of carbonized bread shooting 3 feet into the air like a suicidal confetti cannon. Arya yelped. Thorne was instantly between her and the appliance, one hand raised, gold light crackling at his fingertips. It started it, he said, gravely serious. Arya stared at the smoking wreckage, then at him. You promise no weird physics without a heads up. I requested that it release your bread. It declined. I insisted. You electrocuted my toaster because it was holding my sourdough hostage. A poor hostage negotiator, Thorne agreed. Arya laughed. She couldn't help it, the sound bubbling up hysterical and genuine. She sank onto the counter, head in her hands. This is insane. You're insane. I'm keeping a glow-in-the-dark warlord in my studio apartment, and he's killing my appliances with lightning. Thorne lowered his hand, the sparks dimming. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, smell that impossible scent of ozone and ancient forests. Arya, he said, and the formal edge in his voice softened. You tremble. I'm having a crisis. It's called caffeine and existential dread. You fear the bond. He reached out, hesitant, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. You fear that I am real, and that I will not leave, and that you do not know what to do with permanence. She looked up at him, caught. I don't even know what this bond is, Thorne. You keep saying it like it's a binding contract, but I didn't sign anything. I read a piece of garbage poetry under a bus stop. That's not consent. That's littering. Thorne knelt. Actually knelt, one knee on her linoleum, looking up at her like she was the altar now. Then let me explain it plainly. No vows. No poetry. He held up his hands, framing an invisible shape between them. In my realm, we call it the weave. Every soul is a thread. Most threads tangle or fray or run parallel forever without touching. But some. He brought his hands together, fingers lacing. Some knots are absolute, predetermined, a perfect match across infinite possibility. Soulmate bingo, Arya whispered. Thorne blinked. Bingo? You know, the game with the numbers. You think you're playing alone and then suddenly, bam, someone calls your number and you've won a prize you didn't even know you were playing for. She swallowed. You're saying I won cosmic bingo, and the prize is you. Something like that. His smile was careful, hopeful. The odds were impossible. Across every realm, every thread, your voice matched mine exactly. You spoke and the weave replied. Not because you commanded it, because it recognized you. That's... She wanted to say terrifying. She wanted to say ridiculous. But what came out was... That's kind of beautiful. In a cheesy, cosmic way. I am told, Thorne said, rising slowly, that you underestimate coincidence. Who told you that? You, last night, in your sleep. You spoke of probabilities and bad luck. She stared at him. I talk in my sleep? You also kick. Arya groaned. Great. So you're real, you're permanent, and you know my subconscious anxieties. This just gets better. Thorne stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes stayed warm. I do not require you to believe it yet. Only to know that I am not a storm you must weather. I am... He glanced at the window, at the trash cans below, and the smile he gave her was almost shy. I am the trash cans. Constant, unremarkable, present. You are definitely not unremarkable, she muttered. Then I will work on it, he said, as requested. Chapter 4. Live and Unfiltered. The studio had been sterilized. New monitors, new foam padding, a new, absolutely no supernatural manifestations sign that Nico had printed and taped to the door with the urgency of a man warding off demons. Arya sat in her usual chair, adjusting her headset, while Thorne occupied the guest seat, looking ludicrously out of place in a borrowed blazer that strained across his shoulders, his hair tied back with a rubber band she'd found in her junk drawer. Remember, she whispered, checking the mic levels. You're a historical reenactment expert, from Iceland, with a vitamin D deficiency that explains the glowing. I do not know what Iceland is, Thorne whispered back. It's cold. You like cold. Just nod and look brooding. Nico counted down from behind the glass. 3, 2, 1. The red light warmed. Welcome back to Wolf Down, Arya said, sliding into her host voice like armor. Tonight we're discussing the mythology of soulmates across cultures, and I've got a special guest. Thorne, tell the nice internet people why you think destiny is real without sounding like you're trying to sell them crystals. Thorne leaned toward the mic. Destiny is not a vendor, he said, his voice rolling out rich and formal. It is a cartographer. It does not sell you a path. It notes where your feet have already walked. The live chat exploded. Who is this man? His voice just dropped my panties into another dimension. Is that the guy from the Valentines stream? The chemistry is electric. Arya's face is red. Arya choked on her water. Very poetic, but what about the science? The probability of finding one person in 7 billion? Probability is for those who have not found their match, Thorne said, and his gaze locked on hers, gold eyes catching the studio lights. When you find them, probability becomes a comfort for the lonely, not a law for the bonded. Arya's earpiece crackled with Nico's voice. Jesus, Arya, the numbers are going insane. We're trending. She ignored him, caught in the gravitational pull of Thorne's stare. And what about when the match is inconvenient? She asked, her voice softer than intended. When it's messy and impossible and breaks every rule? Then it is simply love, Thorne said. The bond is merely the compass. The journey is still yours to walk. Static crackled, not from the equipment, but from the air between them. Arya felt it, that electric hum that seemed to arc from his skin to hers, making the hairs on her arms stand up. The monitors flickered, not with malfunction, but with a strange, synchronized pulse that matched her heartbeat. Did the lights just flicker? They're literally glowing. Is this a bit? Hashtag Wolfdown Electricity is trending. Okay, Arya said, her voice breathier than she wanted. We're going to take a break before my studio achieves sentience. Don't go anywhere. Nico cut the feed. He burst through the door, wild-eyed. Arya, the fandom's losing it. They're shipping you so hard the servers are smoking. There are already fanfics. Already. And the way you two look at each other, seriously, what is happening right now? Arya looked at Thorne. He was watching her with that ancient, patient gaze, but there was a smugness there too. The look of a man who knew he'd won an argument without saying a word. We're negotiating, she told Nico. It looks like foreplay. Same difference, she muttered, and Thorne's quiet laugh vibrated through the room, making the mic hum with feedback. Chapter 5. Lineage and Keypads. They walked. The city had not agreed to Thorne. Streetlights buzzed too bright, car alarms chirped and died as they passed, but they walked anyway. Arya's hands were shoved deep in her jacket pockets, creating a barrier between her skin and his. So, she said, because silence felt louder than sirens. You're a king, with lineage. Try flashing that at a cop and see how far it gets you. Thorne adjusted his stride to match hers, boots finding rhythm on the concrete. So your guards must be corded with lineage and parchment? Sure, let's go with that. And tax forms. Lots of tax forms. They waited at a red light. Thorne moved as if listening for some rhythm that didn't belong to traffic. When headlights brushed his coat, the color seemed to shift, charcoal to silver, like the fabric obeyed him. Where exactly was your palace? She asked. Stonecarver, was it? He glanced skyward, searching a constellation that wasn't there. Stonecarver rests in the valley of spun glass, beneath the high loom of the weavers. Of course it does. Arya tugged her jacket tighter. You're lucky no one's live streaming this, or you'd be an internet deity by morning. Thorne's brow knit. You speak of it as though it is worship. Basically. Very low-maintenance cult. All we need is a trending hashtag and pretty lighting. He smiled faintly then, the first genuine thing she'd seen on his face since the studio. It hit her like a live wire, fast and blinding. They reached her building, the same brick relic, stubbornly surviving between a vape shop and a failed kombucha bar. Thorne stopped at the keypad beside the door. It blinked red. Do you duel it for access? He asked. It's a lock. You punch in numbers, it grants you safe passage. No combat involved. He nodded solemnly. A magical sigil, then. Sure. Just keep your glowing energy thing to yourself, okay? She entered the code. The door clicked. Thorne stopped short beneath the tiny overhang. The hallway light lined his shoulders in gold, and something ancient in his posture softened. He was waiting. You're not coming in? She asked. Not without your invitation, he said carefully. Rulers do not invade the homes of equals. It is courtesy. Arya froze, key still half-turned. You need a written one, or are we talking vampire rules? Courtesy, he repeated. She sighed, shoulders sinking. Fine. Come in before the landlord decides I'm entertaining street theater. Inside, warmth closed around them. Thorne paused just inside the threshold, scanning posters, the cluttered shelf of microphone gear. a potted plant valiantly dying by the window. "This is yours," he said, reverent. "Yeah, Castle Arya, population, bills, and bad decisions." He touched the back of a chair, almost tentative. "Every realm has its treasures." "Don't get sentimental about the furniture. It's from Craigslist." She waved toward the kitchenette. She was off by the door, no glowing portals, and absolutely no summoning spells after midnight. "Requests, remember?" He smiled. That slow, dangerous thing again. "Understood." She watched him unlace his boots with methodical precision, setting them neatly by the door. For the first time, the silence wasn't awkward. It was careful, expectant. Arya grabbed her camera bag just to have something to do. "Tomorrow I figure out how to unsummon you." "And tonight?" His voice was mild, curious. "Tonight I don't freak out." He walked to the window, looking out at the glittering city. In reflection, the shimmer around him flickered. Moonlight caught in motion. She watched, half annoyed that someone could look that mythic while staring at trash trucks. Her head thunked softly against the cabinet. "This is my life now." Behind her, the quiet answer came. And mine, it would seem. Chapter 6. The Pull. The message arrived during stale coffee and worse bagels. Arya was arguing with Thorne about the nutritional value of Pop-Tarts. They're frosted cardboard. "They are tactical rations for the soul," when her phone buzzed across the counter. Thorne went still, his hand halfway to a second bagel. Since when did he have a phone? He removed it from his pocket, a sleek thing that definitely hadn't been there yesterday, and placed it on the table in front of her. The screen glowed with the text. "Your Majesty, notice Council voted in favor. Kingdom will fall unless weavers can retrieve the king. They begin once all converge to sacred dais." Arya read it twice. Translation? "The mage elders are gathering to invoke ritual spells to bring me back." "Oh, well, that's a good thing, is it not?" "No." Thorne's face hardened. "That is not consent implied. That is against my will. That is the exact definition of kidnap." They slipped out of the coffee shop into the oblivious hum of the crowd. The walk back to her apartment was quiet, Thorne's hand finding hers, but the easy banter had fractured into uneasy silence. Every streetlight cast longer shadows. By the time they reached her door, the weight of it pressed down. Inside, Thorne slumped onto the couch, a posture so unnoble it startled her. Arya didn't sit. She hovered, arms crossed like a barrier against the dissonance humming between them. "Okay, so what are you going to do? Do you know when? How? How much? How long?" At the words, "how long," something in him broke. He dove forward, arms wrapping around her frame with desperate strength, head pressing reverent against her chest. Over her heart. The embrace was overwhelming. His body a fortress of granite and divine presence, yet trembling like a soft center cracking through stone. "I won't leave you," he murmured, voice muffled against her. "I only just found you. You don't even understand what the bond is yet. I cannot leave you. Not ever." Arya's breath caught, one arm trapped in his embrace while the other hovered awkwardly before threading into his hair. The idea of this, of him choosing her over a kingdom, had flickered in her mind 90 seconds after meeting him. But now it crashed against reality. There," she said, her voice softer than intended, fingers stroking his hair. "You don't really want to give up your kingdom, do you?" He shook his head against her, not lifting it yet. "Yes, I do. I am. But the destruction part, what about the guilt?" He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, arms still holding her close. "The kingdom is a mountain. It can crumble or shift. It will never fall. I've built it once. It endures without me." "So you build mountains. Well, that explains the biceps." It was reflex humor, but it rang hollow. Thorne's mouth quirked faintly. "And I do not require the power of the king. As you said, it's overkill here." "Wait, what?" She pulled back a fraction more. "Your Alpha King power. It just goes away if you abdicate?" He nodded. "When I am no longer king, I will not hold that force. It's tied to the throne." "Oh, no," her words tumbled out. "Do you even know if you would survive that? You're like a marshmallow wrapped in marble right now. All tough on the outside, soft underneath. But if you lose the marble, you okay with being just the marshmallow? He chuckled low, the sound rumbling through her. Arya, I will always protect you. That core, the alpha in me, can never fade. I won't stop being an alpha shifter. It's who I am at my root, beyond the crown. She blinked. Alpha shifter, break that down for me. It means strength, instinct, leadership woven into my blood. The Alpha King power? That's the full hurricane, cataclysmic force. But plain alpha power? It's a storm, powerful, with lightning that strikes true but contained. More than enough here, where humans, no offense, mostly manage a few birthday candles on a good day. She let out a pfft, the sound escaping despite the gravity. So, you're downgrading from God mode to Superstorm? And you're fine with that? More than fine, he said, pulling her back into a lighter hold. It means I stay, with you. The words settled like embers. Outside, the city kept moving, loud and restless. Inside, the dissonance softened into something almost hopeful. Chapter 7. The Vegas Option. Morning came too early, as usual. Arya sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop angled against a stack of pillows. Her Wi-Fi jury-rigged back to life overnight with a cheap hotspot from the corner store. Thorne stood at the window, half lit by the city's pale glow, still in that habit of watching the horizon as though it might open and swallow him whole. Do you ever actually sleep? She asked without looking up, her voice steadier now, the dissonance from last night simmering into resolve. Occasionally, he said, less so when the weave trembles. She blew on her coffee, unimpressed. The weave's been trembling since you got here. Maybe it's caffeine withdrawal. He turned, faint smile forming. You mock because you care. I mock because it's efficient. She typed something, frowned, deleted it. All right, explain again why you think the realm's pulling you back now. The lines weaken. When they collapse, I will be taken. She crossed her arms. We're still talking extra-dimensional extradition. Love that for us. Unless, Thorne said, we find help. She raised an eyebrow. And where exactly does one find inter-realm tech support? Pray, he said. Arya barked a laugh. Or search. He looked intrigued. The one you call Google? You got it. She patted the cushion next to her. Come, almighty exile. Let's crowdsource salvation. He joined her, watching letters appear as she typed. Every forum and thread was a rabbit hole. People trading theories, art, playlists, and their unwavering affection for them. I told you our fandom's loyal, she said. They could power a small kingdom. I had a kingdom, Thorne replied. It was less organized. Then Thorne straightened. Stop. She blinked. What now? Go back, that name. She scrolled up until it reappeared, halfway through a comment chain. Someone should ask Zyron Knox. He says he sees between realms. Thorne leaned closer. I've heard that name before. Arya clicked. A polished page appeared, simple and confident. One photo caught mid-performance. Tour dates. A tagline about prophetic insight. She scanned it. Magician. Vegas lights. Desktop quality smoke. Not exactly the ancient sage vibe. Thorne's tone stayed mild. Astral projection is real. Some travel between planes while their bodies remain. We called them far walkers. She looked at him. And you think this guy does that? During halftime between card tricks? He could. She folded her arms. Fine, I'll ask. But if his manager tries to upsell us crystal necklaces, we're leaving. She typed a short message. If Zyron Knox remembers the name Thorne of the Weave, we need help. Minutes later, her inbox chimed. She frowned and opened it. My tour schedule places me in Las Vegas tomorrow. Please accept my invitation. I am honored to serve King Thorne. A car will take you to my private hangar. My jet and pilot await your convenience. Arya stared at the screen. Well, that's unsettlingly efficient. Also, he has a jet. Of course he has a jet. Thorne's eyes were steady. It's an answer. She let out a breath. Or a marketing stunt. Either way, looks like I'm packing actual clothes instead of... She gestured at her current outfit of yoga pants and a podcast tee. This. The rest of the day slid into motion with their usual rhythm. quick remarks, shared glances, the kind of quiet trust that didn't need words. When the car arrived, it was black, immaculate, and driven by a man who didn't blink at Thorne's shoulders or Arya's nervous babbling about cosmic emergencies. The airport was private, the kind where celebrities and oligarchs avoided TSA. The jet sat on the tarmac like a silver bullet, stairs already down, interior glowing with the soft light of money. "If this ends with doves and smoke tricks," Arya said, tossing her bag to a waiting attendant, "you owe me dinner." "If it ends up with survival," Thorne corrected, settling beside her as the engines began to whine, "I will owe you everything." She smiled because he meant it. The door sealed, the plane lifted, and the desert stretched gold and endless beneath them. Tomorrow waited in Vegas. Chapter 8. The Shifter's Stage. The Vegas heat hit them like walking into a dragon's yawn, dry, aggressive, and faintly sulphurous. Arya squinted against the assault of neon even at noon, her sunglasses doing absolutely nothing against the sheer audacity of the strip. "Remind me why we're trusting a guy whose entire brand is 'I see things others don't,' plastered on a billboard next to a half-naked magician and a Cirque du Soleil knockoff?" Thorne walked beside her, unbothered by the chaos, his eyes scanning the crowd with that predator calm she'd come to recognize. "Because," he responded, "and because desperation makes strange allies." "That's comforting," she muttered, dodging a guy in a Pikachu costume handing out escort service flyers. Really feeling the ancient mystical vibe here. Also, I'm still processing that we flew here in his private jet. That was not on my bingo card for interdimensional crisis management. The theater's Iron Knox, between worlds, sat wedged between a buffet casino and a souvenir shop selling "I Heart Vegas" shot glasses in bulk. The marquee glittered with his face mid-mysterious stare, all sharp cheekbones and eyes that promised secrets. Arya stopped at the doors, arms crossed. "Last chance to admit this is a terrible idea." "Noted," Thorne said, pulling the door open. "After you." Inside was darker, cooler, the lobby dressed in deep purples and blacks, mood lighting doing overtime to sell the whole Enigma aesthetic. A woman at the concierge desk looked up, her smile practiced but warm. "Can I help you?" "We're here to see Zyron Knox," Arya said, keeping her tone professional. "He's expecting us." The woman's smile didn't falter, but something flickered. Recognition, maybe. She tapped her tablet, nodded. "Of course. Mr. Knox is finishing a rehearsal. Please follow me." They were led through a side corridor, past framed posters of Zyron in various dramatic poses. Levitating, surrounded by light, that kind of thing. Arya leaned toward Thorne. "If he floats during this conversation, I'm out." "I'll hold you to that," he murmured back, the faintest grin tugging at his mouth. The corridor opened into the theater itself. Rows of plush seats facing a stage currently lit in amber and shadow. At center stage stood a man, mid-30s, dressed in fitted black with silver embroidery tracing arcanic patterns along the sleeves. He moved with the kind of fluid grace that came from either dance training or actual magic. Arya wasn't ruling out either. As they approached, he turned, and his face lit up with genuine delight. "Your Majesty," Zyron said, voice smooth as expensive whiskey, dropping into a bow that somehow didn't feel mocking. "It is an honor." Thorne inclined his head, the gesture regal but less formal than Arya expected. "Zyron Knox, I was told you walk between realms." Zyron straightened, his smile shifting to something sharper, more knowing. "In a manner of speaking, my consciousness travels while my body remains anchored here. A useful trick for a performer, and occasionally for other purposes." His gaze flicked to Arya, assessing but not unkind. "And you must be Arya, the podcaster who summoned a king." She raised an eyebrow. "Accidentally. Let's not oversell my competence." He laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. "Humility. I like that. Please sit." He gestured to the front row, then hopped off the stage with surprising ease, joining them as they settled into the seats. Up close, his eyes were striking, gray-green like storm clouds over a forest, and they held a weight that made Arya's instinct to deflect falter. "So," Zyron said, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, "you're here because the Weavers are pulling strings, and you'd rather not dance." Thorne's jaw tightened. "They're summoning me back. Against my will." Zyron nodded slowly, the levity draining from his expression. "The dais ritual. Old magic, rooted deep. Once all the elders converge, the weave will collapse around you and drag you home. Consent optional. That's the one, Arya said, her voice tight. Any chance you have a cosmic restraining order we can file? Zirin's mouth quirked. Not quite, but I might have something better. He stood, pacing a few steps, hands behind his back like a professor mid-lecture. The ritual relies on anchor points, places or objects tied to your essence, Your Majesty. The stronger the anchor in this realm, the harder it is for them to pull you through. If we can ground you here more firmly than they can tether you there... The weave would fracture the pull, Thorne finished, his eyes narrowing with understanding. But anchors powerful enough to counteract a deus summoning would require... Something deeply tied to you, yes, Zirin interrupted, turning back to face them. Soul bond level connection, which conveniently you have. He nodded toward Arya. She's already your anchor. The bond formed then. It's why the pull hasn't taken him yet. You're holding the line, whether you realize it or not. The words settled over her like a weight and a lifeline all at once. She looked at Thorne, who met her gaze with something unreadable. Gratitude, fear, hope all tangled together. So, what? We just hold hands really hard and hope for the best? Zirin chuckled. Not quite, but there's more. He sat again, leaning back with a casual confidence that felt rehearsed but not fake. I've walked your realm, Thorne. Seen the weave from the other side. I know the old paths, the anchor stones scattered across both worlds. There's one. Stone you used decades ago in a summoning chant. If we find it, we can reverse engineer the tether, bind you here permanently. Thorne's expression sharpened. I've used many stones. Which one? The one you carved with your own mark. Northern Territory near the borderlands. Ring any bells? Thorne went still, memory flickering behind his eyes. Yes, but it was lost during the northern skirmishes. I assumed it shattered. It didn't, Zirin said, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. It was taken, and I know who has it. Arya felt the shift in the air, Thorne's focus zeroing in like a hunting wolf. Who? Zirin smiled, but it wasn't smug. It was the smile of someone about to drop a bomb. Declan Carver, Alpha of the Northern Territories. This world's equivalent of you, in a way. Powerful shifter, rules his pack with an iron fist tempered by surprising compassion. He collected relics from your realm years ago, before he understood what they were. The stones in his vault. Shifter, Thorne repeated, the word heavy with significance. Here? Oh yeah, Zirin said, nodding. There are more people like you in this world than you'd think. Shifters, mages, walkers like me, we keep our heads down, blend in. Humanity's not ready for the full reveal, so we play nice. But Declan, he's old school. Respects power, honor, that whole code. If you approach him right, he'll help. Arya looked between them, brains scrambling to keep up. So, let me get this straight. We need to find a magical rock that's currently in the possession of a werewolf CEO who's basically Thorne's doppelganger. Convince him to hand it over, and then... What? Use it to anchor Thorne here before the mage elders yank him back through a portal? Pretty much, Zirin said cheerfully. Though I'd skip the werewolf label around Declan. He prefers alpha shifter. Semantics matter to his kind. Thorne stood, the decision already made, his posture radiating that kingly authority again. Where do we find him? Canada, Zirin said, standing as well. Northern Territories. He's got a compound up there, runs his pack, and several legitimate businesses. I can get you an introduction. Declan owes me a favor. Saved his cousin from a nasty astral entanglement last year. He'll see you. Arya stood too. Slower, her mind still catching up. This is insane. We just got here, and now we're flying to Canada to negotiate with a shifter alpha over a magic rock. Welcome to my world, Zirin said with a grin. Then, more seriously, this is your best shot. The Deus ritual won't wait, and anchors don't grow on trees. Declan's your key. Plus, he added with a slight smile, he's married to a human. He'll understand the complications of cross-species relationships better than most. Thorne turned to Arya, his hand finding hers, the touch grounding and electric all at once. Are you with me? She looked at him, at the vulnerability barely masked by determination, at the insane plan that somehow felt more solid than anything they'd tried so far. Then she looked at Zirin, who watched them with an expression that was part amusement, part respect. You're sure about this? About Declan? As sure as I am about anything, Zyron said. He's a good man. Gruff but fair, and he'll understand what's at stake. Arya exhaled, long and slow, then squeezed Thorne's hand. Fine. But if this ends with us running from an angry pack of shifters, you're buying me the biggest damn coffee Canada has to offer. Thorne's smile was small but real. Deal. Zyron clapped his hands once, breaking the tension. Excellent, I'll make the call. And don't worry about transportation, you can take my jet again. Pack warm, the Northern Territories aren't as forgiving as Vegas. As they turned to leave, Arya paused, glancing back at the stage, the lights still glowing amber. Hey Zyron, one question. Shoot. Do you actually float during your show? He winked. Come back for a performance and find out. She snorted, shaking her head as they walked out. Thorne's hand stayed in hers, steady and sure. Outside, the Vegas heat hit them again, but this time it felt less oppressive, more like the world exhaling, making space for what came next. That was... Arya started, then stopped, searching for words. Productive? Thorne offered, the corner of his mouth lifting. Yeah, she said, slightly stunned. Weirdly, stupidly productive. And there are more people like you in this world. Who knew? The gods work in strange ways, Thorne said, his tone dry but warm. Or Zyron works in strange ways, Arya countered. Jury's still out. They walked back toward the car, the strip's chaos feeling almost manageable now. Arya's mind buzzed, anchor stones, shifter alphas, astral projections. But beneath it all, a small, stubborn hope took root. They had a plan. They had a lead. And for the first time since that message arrived, the weave pulling Thorne away felt like something they could fight. Canada, she said aloud, testing the word. Never been. Then it will be an adventure, Thorne replied. She glanced at him, at the confidence and the fear both written in the set of his shoulders, and smiled despite herself. Guess we're doing this. We are, he said, and the certainty in his voice wrapped around her like armor. The car pulled up and they climbed in, the strip shrinking behind them as the road stretched ahead. Toward the airport, toward Zyron's jet, toward whatever strange alliance waited in the cold northern air. Arya leaned her head back against the seat, Thorne's hand still holding hers. For the record, she said, eyes closed, if Declan Carver turns out to be a furry convention enthusiast, I'm blaming you. Thorne's laugh was low and rich, the sound filling the car like warmth. Noted. And the miles rolled on, carrying them toward the next impossible thing. Chapter 9. Carver Towers. The descent into Vancouver was smooth, Zyron's jet cutting through low clouds like silk through water. Arya pressed her face to the window, watching the city sprawl below, glass towers catching late afternoon light, mountains rising in the distance like ancient guardians. Okay, I'll admit it, she said, not pulling back from the glass. Flying private is definitely spoiling me for commercial. Thorne sat beside her, more relaxed than she'd seen him since the message arrived. Zyron has good taste. Zyron has good money, she corrected. There's a difference. The plane touched down at a private airfield, and within minutes they were walking across the tarmac, their breath visible in the crisp Canadian air. Arya pulled her jacket tighter, grateful she'd packed layers. Note to self, Vegas heat does not prepare you for Canadian autumn. A black SUV waited near the terminal, and beside it stood a woman who commanded attention without trying. She was tall, elegant, with long silver hair that caught the light like spun moonbeams, falling past her shoulders in a way that seemed both wild and refined. Her posture was regal, not the practiced poise of wealth, but something deeper, more primal. Age touched her face in fine lines that spoke of wisdom rather than wear, and her eyes, sharp amber, held the kind of knowing that made Arya feel simultaneously seen and safe. When she saw them approaching, her face lit with a smile that was both warm and knowing. Your Majesty, she said, inclining her head to Thorne with genuine respect. I am Wren, Beta of the Northern Territories. Alpha Declan sends his regards and his apologies. He's currently handling pack business, but looks forward to meeting you both. Thorne returned the gesture, his own bearing shifting subtly into something more formal. The honor is mine, Beta Wren. Thank you for the welcome. Wren's gaze shifted to Arya, and her smile softened into something almost maternal. And you must be Arya, the one who called him home. Arya blinked, caught off guard by the phrasing. Yeah, that's me. The accidental summoner. Nothing accidental about soul bonds, Ren said gently, then gestured toward the SUV. Shall we? The Alpha has arranged accommodations for you in the city. Tomorrow we'll transport you north to the estate. As they settled into the SUV, leather seats, heated, because of course, Ren explained the logistics from the driver's seat, her voice calm and assured. The Northern Territories are remote by design. We'll take you by seaplane to the lake, then helicopter to the compound. It's quite a journey, but necessary for privacy and security. Privacy from what? Arya asked, buckling her seatbelt as the city lights began to flicker on in the growing dusk. Humans mostly, Ren said with a slight smile, pulling smoothly into traffic. And occasionally other supernatural politics. Declan prefers to keep pack business away from the city. The estate is, well, you'll see. It's beautiful but isolated. Worth the trip. The drive through Vancouver was a blur of urban sophistication. Clean streets, modern architecture, the kind of city that knew it was beautiful and didn't need to show off about it. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks dusted with early snow, and the ocean glinted between buildings. When they pulled up to Carver Towers, Arya let out a low whistle. The building stretched up into the sky, all glass and steel, with Carver etched in understated letters near the top. Subtle, she murmured. Ren chuckled, a rich sound that filled the car. Declan doesn't do subtle, but he does do comfortable. The penthouse condo was proof of that. Ren led them through a private elevator that opened directly into the space. No hallway, no neighbors, just instant luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city and mountains beyond, the skyline glittering like scattered diamonds. The furniture was modern, but warm. Rich woods, soft fabrics in deep grays and blues, the kind of space that whispered money without shouting it. A full kitchen gleamed with stainless steel and marble, and through an open doorway, Arya glimpsed a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. She dropped her bag by the door and turned in a slow circle, taking it in. This is... wow. Declan's city residence when he's handling business here, Ren explained, setting a key card on the kitchen island. He wants you to be comfortable. There's food stocked in the fridge, and anything else you need, just call the concierge. They're discreet and used to... unusual requests. Her smile suggested she knew exactly how unusual their situation was. Thorne moved to the windows, his silhouette framed against the city lights, and Ren watched him with an expression Arya couldn't quite read. Respect, curiosity, maybe a hint of sympathy. The Alpha will see you tomorrow evening after you've rested. The journey north can be taxing for those not used to it. Thank you, Thorne said, turning back to her. For everything. Ren inclined her head. It's an honor to help. Declan understands what it means to fight for the one you love. Her gaze flicked to Arya, warm and knowing. His wife, Centraya, is human. He's walked this path before. Different circumstances, but the same heart of it. You're in good hands. With that, she left. The elevator doors closing with a soft chime, and suddenly the space felt enormous and intimate all at once. Arya exhaled, the tension she'd been carrying since Vegas easing just a fraction. Well, this is not how I expected today to go. Thorne crossed to her, his movements fluid and sure, and pulled her into a gentle embrace. Better or worse? She leaned into him, her cheek against his chest, the steady thrum of his heartbeat grounding her. Better, definitely better. I mean, we're in a billionaire's penthouse, about to meet a shifter alpha who might actually help us. That's... progress. It is, he murmured into her hair, his arms tightening around her. We're close, Arya. I can feel it. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her hands resting on his chest. You really think Declan will help? Just like that? Zarin trusts him. Ren respects him, and he's bonded to a human. Thorne's expression softened, vulnerability flickering in his eyes. He'll understand. Arya nodded, then stepped back, needing movement to process the swirl of hope and fear tangling in her chest. Okay, well, while we're here, I'm going to do what I do best. Research the hell out of this guy. She grabbed her laptop from her bag and settled onto the plush couch, Thorne joining her after a moment, his presence a warm anchor beside her. The search for Declan Carver yielded surprisingly little. A few business articles about Carver Industries, mentions of real estate holdings and environmental conservation efforts, but no social media. No Instagram, no Twitter, not even a LinkedIn. For a billionaire, he was a ghost online. Huh? Arya muttered, scrolling. This guy makes you look like an influencer. Thorne leaned over her shoulder, reading. He values privacy. Or he's really good at hiding. She clicked another link, and this time a photo loaded, a professional shot from a charity gala. A man stood beside a woman, both dressed formally. Declan Carver was exceptionally tall, broad-shouldered with long ashen blonde hair and the brooding smile of a billionaire with the Norse god features and a face of quiet authority. Handsome in a rugged, no-nonsense way. But it was the woman beside him who caught Arya's attention. Zentraya Carver was stunning. Dark skin, natural long black hair framing her face, a smile that was both gracious and genuine. The article focused on her philanthropy work, her foundation supporting indigenous communities and environmental causes. There was a warmth to her in the photo, a groundedness that contrasted with the usual polished veneer of high society. She looks normal, Arya said, surprised. I mean, in a good way. Like someone you'd actually want to have coffee with. Thorne studied the image, his expression thoughtful. She looks happy. Yeah, Arya said softly, something in her chest loosening. She does. She closed the laptop, the research done, and leaned back into the couch. The city stretched out beyond the windows, a sea of lights against the darkening sky. For the first time in days, the constant hum of anxiety in her mind quieted. They had a plan. They had allies, and tomorrow they'd meet the one person who might actually be able to help. We're going to make this work, she said, more to herself than to Thorne. He turned to her, his hand finding hers, fingers lacing together. We are. The certainty in his voice, the warmth of his touch, it all combined into something that felt dangerously close to hope. Arya looked at him, really looked, and saw the same mix of fear and determination reflected back. They'd been thrown together by accident, bound by forces neither fully understood, and yet here they were, fighting for something neither wanted to lose. Thorne, she started, her voice quieter now, the banter stripped away. If this works, if we actually pull this off, we will, he interrupted gently, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. But if we do, she continued, needing to say it, what happens next? You stay here, give up your kingdom, and then... What? We figure out how to be normal? He smiled, a soft, almost sad curve of his lips. I don't think we'll ever be normal, Arya. But we'll be together. That's enough. The words settled over her, simple and profound. And before she could second-guess it, she leaned in and kissed him. It was different from before. Not the desperate, world-ending kiss from her apartment, but something slower, deeper. A promise instead of a plea. Thorne responded immediately, his hand cupping her face, the kiss shifting from gentle to something more urgent. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, Arya's heart was racing for entirely different reasons than fear. We should probably eat something, she said, her voice unsteady. Ren said there's food. We should, Thorne agreed, but neither of them moved. The moment stretched, charged and fragile, and then Arya made a decision. She stood, pulling him up with her, and led him toward the bedroom. Or we could not. His eyes darkened, understanding flickering there, along with the question. Arya. I know, she said, cutting him off. I know this is crazy and fast and probably a terrible idea by every rational measure. But I also know that tomorrow we're flying into the middle of nowhere to ask a stranger for help with interdimensional magic. And I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Thorne searched her face, his hand still in hers, and whatever he saw there made him nod. Neither do I. They crossed the threshold into the bedroom, the city lights casting soft shadows across the space. Arya's hands found the hem of his shirt, and he helped her pull it over his head, revealing the sculpted lines of muscle and the faint scars that marked his skin, evidence of a life lived in battle and duty. She traced one with her fingertip, and he shivered under her touch. You're sure? He asked, his voice rough, hands settling on her hips. I'm sure, she whispered and kissed him again. What followed was a tangle of hands and whispered words, the shedding of clothes and walls both. Thorne was gentle but intense, every touch reverent, as though she were something precious he'd been searching for his entire life. Arya let herself fall into it, into him, the fear and doubt melting away under the heat of his skin against hers. When they finally came together, it felt like more than just physical, like the bond between them solidified into something unbreakable, a tether stronger than any magic. Arya gasped his name, and Thorne held her like she was his anchor, his salvation, his home. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, the city glowing beyond the windows, their breathing slowly evening out. Thorne's arm was wrapped around her, her head resting on his chest, and for the first time since this all began, Arya felt safe, whole. That was, she started, then laughed softly. I don't even have a sarcastic comment for that. Thorne's chest rumbled with quiet laughter, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. I'll take that as a compliment. You should, she murmured, her eyes already growing heavy. The exhaustion of the past days, the fear, the travel, the constant adrenaline, finally caught up with her, and she let herself sink into the warmth of him. Sleep, Thorne said softly, pressing a kiss to her hair. I'll keep watch. You always do, she whispered, and let the darkness pull her under. Thorne held her as she drifted off, his own eyes on the window, the mountains in the distance. Tomorrow they would face Declan Carver. Tomorrow they would fight for their future. But tonight, in this moment, they had each other. And that, he thought, was worth any kingdom. Chapter 10. The Pull. Morning light streaked through the blinds, casting golden bars across tangled sheets and scattered clothes. The echo of laughter still lingered from the night before. Breathless giggles that had turned into something deeper, hungrier. Arya stretched against Thorne's chest, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath her cheek, his heartbeat steady and sure. Okay, I got one, Thorne said, his voice still rough with sleep and satisfaction, fingers tracing lazy patterns along her spine. She lifted her head to look at him, grinning. Hit me. Soulmates, the only thing the universe got right on the first try. Everything else is beta. Arya doubled over, holding her stomach as laughter threatened to spill her guts across the sheets. Oh my God, stop. Your turn, he said, clearly pleased with her reaction. She gasped for breath, wiping tears from her eyes. Okay, last one. Soulmates, proof that even chaos wants to argue about what to eat for dinner. Thorne's laugh was rich and unguarded, the sound vibrating through his chest into hers. But then her stomach gave a particularly vicious growl, and they both dissolved into fresh giggles. Food, she declared, struggling to untangle herself from the sheets. The unforgiving hunger pains demand sacrifice. They dressed with the kind of casual intimacy that felt both new and ancient. Him helping her find her shirt, her fingers trailing along his chest as he buttoned his. In the kitchen, they moved around each other with surprising ease, but the laughter kept interrupting everything. One moment they were attempting pancakes, the next he had her pinned against the counter, his mouth hot against her neck, growling low enough to make her gasp. Did you just growl? You said growling wasn't part of human courtship, he murmured against her skin. But it's in my nature. Oh my fuck, Thorne, she breathed. I want you. Growling is definitely in. Growl. Oh my... The next moment, he'd saved her humanity, and she was screaming his name like scripture. Breakfast was thoroughly interrupted when Thorne hurled the traitorous pancakes skyward before they combusted on the stove. The poor thing's still smoldering in the sink, she announced, finally catching her breath enough to laugh as she slipped back into her clothes. Thorne pulled his shirt on, the transformation from domestic god back to ancient alpha, seamless and mesmerizing. You can't laugh and breathe, my love. Choose one. Oh, Thorne, she said, still grinning as she watched him button his shirt. You misunderstood the sparks I was seeing. Congratulations. It can't get any hotter in here, even with actual flames. They were both grinning, warmth humming between them. Purposeful humor now. No defense, no deflection. The intimacy had made them almost casual, her teasing keeping him grounded, his charm keeping her steady. It was the lightest they'd ever felt. She was still watching him, admiring the living contrast, the man who'd just promised her forever, who still looked like a walking thunderstorm. She bit her lip. So this is who I am when free from all the bullshit. I love you more than coffee, Thorne. Just don't make me prove it. She laughed, cheeky and feeling weightless. Then she noticed it. Faint gold veins pulsing under his skin, dancing with each heartbeat, glowing brighter than sunlight. Thorne, she said, half smile, half question. Is it normal for you to glow? The air tightened. His smile faltered just a little. Depends. Depends on what? Define normal. His rumble stayed steady, but the gold haze rippled at his edges. Radioactive glitching. No, not normal. The room bucked like a living thing, walls groaning deep, picture frames crashing down in splintered wood and glass. A teacup tumbled from the counter, shattering at her feet in a spray of porcelain shards. Arya stumbled back, tears hot on her cheeks, bare soles dodging the glittering hazard. Thorne's form ebbed into blinding gold light, particles swirling upward like ash and wind. But something was different this time. The pull wasn't just taking him, it was taking everything around him. The air itself seemed to tear, reality bending inward like a whirlpool. Look out! His voice cut through the chaos. Don't step in the glass, you could cut yourself. Her heart clenched, certainty flooding through her. Soulmate. No logic, just bone-deep truth. Without hesitation, she leaped into the fading glow, arms locking around his dissolving neck, pulling him close for what she thought would be one final, desperate embrace. But instead of losing him, instead of being left behind, she felt the pull grab her too. The bond between them flared brilliant and fierce, and suddenly she was being dragged along, pulled through the tear in reality, through light and wind and the space between worlds. The return. Flash. Blaring trumpets pierced the air, drums thundered like war, voices boomed through unseen stone halls. The king has returned. Arya's world condensed to warmth and crushing security. She was folded completely into Thorne's lap, her knees drawn up, body curled against his chest like a child seeking shelter from a storm. His massive arms encircled her entirely, one hand cradling the back of her head, fingers tangled deep in her hair, the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her so tightly against him that she could barely draw breath. Her own arms were pinned between them, hands pressed flat against his chest, feeling the rapid thunder of his heartbeat through the rich fabric of his royal garments. The sounds of his kingdom swirled around them, trumpets blaring in triumphant fanfare, the rhythmic clank and scrape of armored soldiers moving in formation, the sharp echo of hooves on stone as horses pranced and stamped. She could hear voices calling his name, formal proclamations booming from unseen heralds, but when she tried to turn her head to see, his grip tightened imperceptibly. Thorne? Her voice was muffled against the velvety softness of cotton covering stone-hard muscles, barely audible over the ceremonial chaos. Yes, little one. The words rumbled through his chest directly into her ear, gravel soft and reverent. She pushed gently against his hold, testing, wanting to glimpse this world that was now hers too. He went statue still, every muscle locking rigid, terrified that if he loosened his grip even slightly, she might vanish, that this moment of having her safe in his arms might dissolve like a dream. Through the cage of his embrace, she caught only fragments, the blur of rich banners hanging from stone walls, the glint of sunlight on armor as distant figures knelt in homage. Thorne, they're calling your name. She stilled against him, listening to the pageantry that surrounded their reunion. Aren't you supposed to be waving? No? Why not? His grip shifted, one hand moving to frame her face, tilting it up so she had no choice but to meet his eyes. The gold light still pulsed faintly beneath his skin, but it was warm now. Steady. No longer the violent pull that had torn them from one world, but the gentle glow of magic at peace. Thank you for not letting go, little one. His lips found her forehead. Once, twice. Fierce and tender kisses that spoke of desperation and relief and promises that would never be broken. I love you. I love you too, Thorne. I love you so much. His voice caught, wonder threading through the rough timbre. But do you ever stop moving? She laughed softly against his chest, and finally, his iron bands loosened just a fraction. Not enough for her to pull away, not enough for her to see the kingdom that awaited them, but enough for her to breathe freely in the circle of his arms. The gold light pulsed steady where their skin touched, and gradually the ceremonial roar around them faded into background noise, less important than his heartbeat, than the warmth of his breath against her hair, than the solid reality of him holding her. Her world had narrowed to this. His face above hers, his arms around her, his eyes holding hers as if she were the only thing worth seeing in all the realms. And maybe, she thought as she settled deeper into his protective embrace, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The kingdom could wait. The crown, the ceremony, the new life stretching ahead of them, all of it could wait. Right now there was only this. Holding each other like they'd never let go. Forever.
Epilogue. The throne room was silent, but for the faint hum of her equipment. Between marble pillars and the sprawling banners of Thorne's crest, a single microphone gleamed like a crown jewel. "I still don't understand why we're doing this in full regalia," Thorne muttered, straightening the heavy collar of his jacket. "Authenticity," Arya said, testing the levels. "Listeners love a dramatic soundscape. And besides, my hobbies didn't vanish when I became queen." "Most queens take up falconry. You took up broadcasting your thoughts to millions of strangers." "Exactly. It's cheaper and doesn't poop on the drapes." Thorne's laugh echoed off the gold-inlaid walls. "What's today's topic, then? Royal scandals? Summoning etiquette? How to handle an overconfident soulmate?" "Tempting," she said, "but I was thinking, love across realms, a cautionary success story." "Cautionary?" He stepped closer, the corner of his mouth lifting. "You summoned me. I'm the happy ending." Arya hit record. Listener's note. He says this after destroying 3 temples, evaporating my ceiling, and forgetting what a fork is. "In my defense," Thorne said smoothly, "the fork looked menacing." "You're menacing." "And yet," he murmured, dropping his voice, "you still chose me." Arya tried to hide her smile behind the mic. "Purely for research. I wanted accurate soulmate data." "Then your findings should be peer-reviewed," he said, kissing her shoulder. Her laugh softened into something warmer. "Fine. 1 peer agrees you're statistically impossible." He touched her chin, eyes steady on hers. "And yet, undeniably real." The on-air sigil dimmed to gold. For a moment, the kingdom outside stilled, listening to the quiet rhythm of 2 voices that always seemed to find each other across time, worlds, and now, waves. "That's a wrap," Arya whispered, saving the file under episode 108, Soulmates Still Arguing. Thorne smiled. "You realize the scholars will play this in history lectures someday." "Good," she said. "Let them learn about love the loud way." Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my very first creation. Many more to come.